Dear NVIDIA, I just watched your new presentation from the SIGGRAPH 2023. Very interesting and so amazing and incredible. And yes, I know sometimes you've done things I don't agree with. Of course, that happens. But from the last presentations I've seen and from the work you've done, it's impressive in all ways. And it's especially this view. This goes to Jensen, that it's this honor that you contain within you, and this joy that you present within the technology that you're presenting. I think most of us struggle with understanding the enormous complexity and, of course, what actually goes on within these systems that so easily can be condensed down to one single point, which is a bit easier to comprehend for most people. But yes, so why am I doing this video? I learned to open my mind a couple of years ago towards new experiences. Since I was a child, I've trained my mind to visualize and create things that aren't there in a sort of 3D perspective, 4D perspective, ever since I was a little kid, working with atoms, physics, quantum mechanics, and exploring every single bit of life, from everything I could watch and observe around me, to generate, in essence, a large language model within my own mind, right? In the most recent years, I've used my time to understand and analyze my own brain and figure out what goes on around inside of my mind, how I use thoughts, how they are maintained within my mind, what actually goes on, doing research on the mechanics of our memory, of how our time goes around, doing thought experiments to understand actually what goes on, how our time, perception of time, and so basically the human experience, right? That is what I'm doing, and right, it is what everyone is doing with their mind, but the being aware of what is going on is a bit of a difference, right? And also understanding the concepts around you and how that affects you and both you and others in the same situation, right? Uh, um, so, coming back to what I'm actually going to talk about, Mirrorland. So it is, to give you an introduction, it is a system that will mirror the insides of your mind towards the outside, so that you'll be able to predict and also to amplify. Because as an individual, I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people. I tend to look for the most incredible and the things that interest them, because then you can have a back and forth conversation, and trying to understand mechanics of what a conversation is, right, is important in certain in terms of these contexts, because you wouldn't be able to properly get these getting to a sort of understanding what reality is very hard, and conversations is a way to do that, right? It's a way of building up information, and as long as both of the individuals, let's say, have a dialogue between two people, if those individuals have the same base knowledge, and they have very intense but contrasting subject, right? It is like mixing two elements together, like black and white. So you have milk poured into water, milk poured into a black liquid that you can see through or something. Those will create large contrasts. And as long as you are mixing these together, right, so they are playing off each other, you have one going that direction and the other, you will have a strong amplitude, right, within the input of the conversation. So these sorts of conversations can start very roughly, and if you know how to manipulate and guide yourself through this, and also play upon new inputs and add on top of this, right, that is how you get really interesting conversations where you reach things that are you aren't able to understand these things unless you are in that very specific time with that exact knowledge on that situation, which requires a database within yourself about all of the surroundings, which is the hard part, because to enable to reach these levels, you need ginormous data sets, which is basically dividing most of our populations into several pieces, because it's hard to get that knowledge. You won't be able to get it even from universities. It is things that you would have to imagine and go beyond and look for yourself, right? So Mirrorland, it's a system that will do this, that will portray the insides of the individual back to him in all aspects of our senses. So it will do it with touch, sense, visuals, hearing, and also, of course, that will again be translated towards us the same way you have a conversation with a human being, right? So that it's a complete experience. Why is it a mirror world? And there's an important aspect around that, because of course you could create worlds that would go outwards that you could portray to others, but those rely on your presumptions and your understandings of different subjects, right? And by portraying these to others, you would, in the best case scenario, you might be able to get that through to them and say that, oh shit, yeah, so this is the thing, right? That is what you're doing with a movie. You're like presenting sort of a story, but like everyone will see that movie from their point of view, right? It's an interpretation, and that is the problem. So understanding that interpretation. So basically, like all of these, like that interpretation is a certain, like it's a mathematical, it's a multi-dimensional point with references to a bunch of points, and we understand that point from different angles, so that everyone has a different perception of different things, right? It's like an objective truth, and people will see that truth with different perspectives. So in the best case scenarios, we're able to portray what we want to portray, and I have models to be able to do this accurately. But it's a dangerous task. It's a very dangerous task. You could use this information to make people angry, of course. It's the simplest things that so it's not tools that should be available to everybody, because it's a bit of it's a hard thing to comprehend, right? The consequences of our actions when they are on these sorts of scales, which is right. It's a bit scary as well with the AI technology, just giving it out to the people. So, but of course, it has its enormous rewards as well. But yeah, so it's important to maintain it. That is one reason, because people can misunderstand it, can be misused. Now the second is that yeah, so it is about the danger, right? So to many, like it's going to be hard to understand this, but like the world we live in, most likely is sort of like a mental. You have this, you have your own mental space within you, right? That mental space, it goes inwards, and you can use it to whatever you want to do. You could, in theory, you could do whatever you want there and create whatever you want. The problem is the lack of outward actions, like the outward consequences of those inwards actions that you might perceive. But it is there for an important reasons. The same way in Marvel's movies, they have like this, basically have like a safe space, right, where you can test out stuff, you can do stuff, and it won't affect other people, and that is an important fact. But having a tool that would enable this space within you, it would so it would mirror it to the outside, but only for you, because you only you have all of the references that are needed, right, to be able to comprehend it. So it's as a system designed for the user, using large language models, basically large data sets. It's basically just multidimensional structures that you're analyzing and taking into account. But yeah, using these, you would be able to, you can portray anything, you can do anything, and you would know how to portray that information to the individual, right? Because it is based off of his assumptions. Basically, the way to do this is a simple way, at least. You would analyze. You have the data, right? So you take it as you're going to basically create a brain within the computer that is being run simultaneously, and you don't need all of the functions, but The more information you have about this, the more accurate that simulation or that representation, the mirror world, will be. And as you're getting closer to these accurate points, the more information you can extract from this. So the same way the conversation will like bounce off of each other. So you say one thing, oh yeah, that's interesting. So the sun has a sort of continuous explosion, right? You say something like that, and the other person, because they understand that the sun has that continuous explosion, they actually understand how the physics works within that. So they will bounce off that and say something else, which will drive your innovation. Now you have suddenly a new input that you will then do something with and maybe return with a new answer. So the more information you have, the better these models will work towards you, right? So you could have these super intelligent conversations. Like smart people have these with themselves, very smart people. But it would help for most people as well to have these conversations with like an external source as well, because it's like it's hard for individuals to externalize themselves in these situations, to have conversation with themselves in relations to like complex situations and environments. And as well, we don't really know the consequences of what that does to our psychology either, and it's important not to like mess too much around with this, because we don't fully understand this yet. We have complex bodies that we do not comprehend the full. Yeah, so our psychologists try, but they do not understand, and they are not even close to understanding this, right? So, but yeah, going back to this, the system would take in data. So, for example, through the voice, the most simple system would be to have the voice being analyzed, turned into text, for example, and also at the same time being turned into different tonalities and abstracting like emotion, sense of like power, everything from that text. So you have basically you have the text itself, and then you have all the tonalities from that text. That is basically the simplest model. That would go into a model in terms of like ChatGPT, just plain into there, and it would analyze. Then if you add a sort of database to this model, so that, well, the user is there. You know this person, you know what references he might use, you know what he has done before. So you would have another data point. So for example, if it says fire, you know that fire for that individual means these things, not necessarily fire. He could mean totally different things, right? So you take these sets and you continue to analyze them. You keep adding more and more data points into the flow. And then as you're approaching like for example, you add, now you're starting to add, okay, so the knowledge of the individual, which means you have to track them through an amount of time, right? Sort of like Google and Facebook have done. So you have to track their psychology, how they behave, what sort of individual they are, right? Then you have to also start to track a lot of the population, because you need to track the determination and like a probabilistic outcomes of certain words, and also of certain cultures, time and era, expecting also the differences in what they have observed. You need a lot of data. That is what this is concluding to. The more data, the more you can do with it. And the same way, these large language models, it seems very simple in the beginning, like the computer. One operation, 0 and 1, doesn't seem like much. If you times that, if you multiply that by 1 billion each second, then you can start doing a lot of things, right? So it's all data in and out, right? And that is the reason also to keep all of these original files, because you need all of that data, because that tiny difference between having the original file, for example, handwritten by Mozart in terms of the notation of the music, in that notation there is slight differences on each individual note, right? On each individual mark, which not necessarily to the naked eye would portray a lot of information, but it would say something about his thoughts in relation to the thing he's thinking about, right? And this we could abstract even further. So we have these, let's say we have all of the data about all of the people. We have made statistics. Basically now we can predict what sort of person they are and what individual they are. You can now fine-tune schooling, you can fine-tune everything to that individual through the use of large language models. You add in the visual stimuli, you add in like the facial perceptions, and all of these as a sort of as a part of a large data analysis, right? So you have the statistics for the entire population in terms of that time and that, right? So basically you have a precise measurement of that precise time in time. It's a bit hard to comprehend, but yeah, you use that, and you should be able to predict what that individual is thinking, what is actually going on, the reaction within his mind, the observation that he is doing, because you should be able to fine-tune this by just yes and no. Is this correct? Is this closer or further away from what you're thinking, right? And doing this enough times, you would be able to actually get to the point where you can predict that. This is also why you cannot have these systems deployed from from like a like a central point where you control the individual, because firstly it would take away a lot from the individual. It would take away a lot from our development and from our potential. But ethically, it's wrong in so many ways, and it's important that we just keep ourselves away from that, as well as like we do not know, we do not comprehend what sorts of like what is actually running on our systems. We may think that we have full control over this, but what we cannot confirm. For example, a couple of years ago. Actually, it's not that long ago, but I developed a system that would, you can run it on top of regular software, and it wouldn't show any differences. But you attune, basically you use different methods of communication, which allows you to communicate unnoticed over the same connections without anyone being able to notice, unless they have your basically method. So these would be used, of course, in military applications. It would like you can just change these methods wherever you want to, right? So it's impossible to trace as well. And the system could be running on everything. So that is the important thing here. You don't know what is going on, and it's important just that we keep this. We have to have a good sense of self. That is one thing. Good sense of like morale. We cannot misuse people. We cannot misuse situations. Like the way scientists now are trying to like cut apart animals, torture them. Not okay. That doesn't work. And if you're trying to create systems like the one I'm describing, using these sorts of methods of torture, pain, and I mean, some sort of pain could be okay, and but not towards other animals with no like self, because it's important that we stay true to ourselves and like have this sense of honor within ourselves, because otherwise we're going to collapse. And that is like one of the other things. We cannot leave these technologies to whoever, because for example an unstable dictator would totally be able to create like collapse in society with these systems, right? So being able to manage the individuals in a way, and that is a bit scary as well, because you don't want to manage like who has control and who has access. But that is what's being done already, right? You have, as in every other species that uses colonization the way we do, like bees, queens, no, like bees and ants, they use queens, right? The queen is designing, and it's important because the queen understands what it's supposed to do. And that applies to humanity as well, right? For example, when I guess like it's a bit of a weird example, but when Caesar made a decision, right? You know that decision was a good decision towards his like associates, right? Because he wouldn't make that decision unless it would was a beneficial one, or he could make a wrong decision, but because people follow it, it's a good one in a way, right? We're coming far off point here, but I think the point of this, the essence, I would really like to try and develop this system with you, NVIDIA, and if it was possible to have a conversation with Jensen in terms of the what the future is, because I have so many ideas in terms of how to accomplish this, what sort of technologies to enable, how to enable people in like one way, but also how to enable the entire society. Like I I die every day when I see that we are still at the point we are, because if like of course it's very hard to like say, oh yeah, but if you were in lead, like in charge, you wouldn't know how to do. But I have actually like made paths. I made all of these, like the governmental systems. I've made systems to enjoyment, to everything, so that we would manage and develop our society in an orderly manner that would like help individuals. And uh eh, I want to help so badly, but like for example, I'm not going to be working for like a company that serves a purpose to of just earning money for some people who don't know what money is even. Like they say big number and that is what they think, right? Why should someone like who actually understands what is going on around our society work for that, right? Why should why should we spend time on people who don't understand what the potential is, what actually leads to good, what actually leads to bad things? Like the same individuals that have made wars on our planet, like we cannot allow ourselves to fight for the wars, right? We have to stop these and understand how, if for example that is a necessary thing, well, how can you avoid that? How can you do better things, right? These systems, we could totally stop every single war if someone had access to like technologies that would do. But we would be able to stop every single war. We would be able to stop poverty within like a couple of months even, because that is the amount of intelligence and power we have available to ourselves today. But it is being restricted. So because that's sort of like a lot of individuals are based living their lives of a fear, and right, that is a difficult thing. So yeah, and enabling the right individuals is the right thing to do, but it's the difficult thing as well, right? It's the same with, yeah, I guess a lot of things. Anyways, I've been talking a lot now. I just want to try the system. I want to try like it's basically like the AI Jarvis of Tony Stark. Create that system, test it, and see what can be done within like a couple of a certain time frame. That is, I guess, what I want to do. So, but anyways, like NVIDIA, thank you for creating like awesome stuff. You definitely shaped my childhood in a good way. Now you gave me space to be creative and also to kind of help me with pain and understand also psychology across like generations, populations, and like it helped a lot. So thank you for that.